Homeowners associations, commonly known as HOAs, play a significant role in shaping the communities where they operate. These organizations are typically formed within residential neighborhoods to enforce certain rules and regulations designed to maintain property values and promote a cohesive aesthetic among homes. While many homeowners appreciate the benefits of living in an HOA, such as well-maintained common areas and organized community events, there can be a flip side to these regulations that often leads to controversy. The primary function of an HOA is to establish and uphold specific standards for property appearance and maintenance. This can include guidelines on lawn care, exterior paint colors, fencing styles, and even the types of landscaping allowed. The rationale behind these rules is quite straightforward. By creating a uniform look throughout the neighborhood, HOAs aim to enhance curb appeal and ultimately protect property values. After all, a well-kept community is usually more appealing to prospective buyers. However, this desire for uniformity can sometimes lead to tensions between individual homeowners and the HOA. Regulations set forth by HOAs can vary widely from one association to another. Some may have strict guidelines that dictate everything from the height of grass blades to the acceptable types of flowers for front yards. Others may be more lenient but still enforce critical standards that all residents must follow. Homeowners typically agree to these rules when they purchase their properties. However, many may not fully grasp the implications until they receive a notice or citation regarding their property's adherence to HOA standards. For instance, one of the most common regulations involves lawn care. Many HOAs mandate that lawns must be kept at a certain height and maintained regularly. This can include requirements for mowing, edging, watering schedules, and even restrictions on which types of grass can be planted. The intention behind these rules is often rooted in maintaining an aesthetically pleasing environment. A uniform lawn appearance contributes not only to the overall beauty of the neighborhood, but also fosters a sense of pride among residents. Yet, it is important to recognize that what may seem like a reasonable request from an HOA can also feel restrictive to homeowners who value personal expression and individuality in their living spaces. When confronted with regulations that infringe upon their ability to cultivate their lawns according to personal taste or lifestyle, some residents may respond with frustration or resistance. This friction can lead homeowners to push back against what they perceive as overreach by the HOA. When residents feel that their creative freedom is under siege by stringent rules, it can ignite a desire for rebellion, an urge to assert one's identity through unconventional means. Some may choose humor or creativity as a way to express their discontent with the uniformity demanded by their HOA. Consider the example of a homeowner who receives a warning from the HOA about their lawn's lack of uniformity. Faced with a choice between compliance with regulations that seem overly prescriptive and taking matters into their own hands, this homeowner might begin brainstorming ways to creatively interpret the concept of uniform. This could lead them down an unexpected path, one that transforms their lawn into something entirely unique. The contrast between individual expression and collective standards becomes apparent in such scenarios. Many homeowners want their yards to reflect personal style while still fitting within community expectations. The challenge lies in finding that balance between adhering to HOA regulations and retaining one's own sense of identity. As residents navigate these complexities, it becomes evident that HOAs wield considerable power over how individuals experience their homes and communities. While some residents appreciate the guidance provided by HOAs in maintaining property aesthetics, others feel stifled by what they see as unnecessary limitations on their creativity and autonomy. Ultimately, understanding the role of HOAs is essential for anyone considering homeownership within such communities. It highlights the importance of thoroughly reviewing HOA guidelines before purchasing a property. It also showcases how these associations can significantly influence not just property values but also residents' relationships with one another. In conclusion, homeowners associations serve as gatekeepers of community standards, striving for uniformity in appearance while often igniting debates around individual expression versus collective identity. As we delve further into this narrative, we will explore how one homeowner responded creatively to an HOA's demands for uniformity, not just complying but defiantly transforming their lawn into something extraordinary. glow-in-the-dark grass. This act of rebellion will serve as both a protest against conformity and a bold statement about personal expression in suburban life, a topic that resonates deeply within many communities today. In many residential neighborhoods governed by homeowners associations, adherence to specific lawn care guidelines is a non-negotiable aspect of community living. The HOA's uniform lawn mandate is designed to create a cohesive aesthetic that contributes to the overall appeal and property values of the neighborhood. However, for the homeowners who must comply with these regulations, the requirements can often feel rigorous and constricting. At the core of these mandates is a set of clear expectations regarding various aspects of lawn maintenance. First and foremost, many HOAs dictate the type of grass that can be planted. This can include restrictions on species based on climate suitability, growth characteristics, and visual appearance. For example, some neighborhoods may only permit certain types of grass that maintain a lush green color year-round or that require less water, promoting sustainability alongside aesthetics. Homeowners are often left with limited choices, which can stifle their ability to personalize their outdoor spaces. Height restrictions are another common component of the uniform lawn mandate. Most HOAs set specific guidelines requiring that grass be maintained at a certain height, often between 2 and 4 inches, along with expectations for regular mowing schedules. Failure to comply with these height restrictions can lead to formal warnings or even fines. This constant pressure to maintain an ideal height can add an extra layer of stress for homeowners, particularly those with busy lives who may struggle to keep up with the demands of regular lawn care. In addition to grass type and height, HOAs often have strict requirements concerning overall appearance. This includes directives on how frequently lawns should be mowed, edged, and treated for pests or weeds. Homeowners may be required to provide proof of maintenance or even submit to inspections conducted by HOA representatives who assess compliance with the established guidelines. The implications for those found in violation can be significant. Not only might they face fines, but they could also risk further actions from the HOA that could affect their standing in the community. Furthermore, landscaping elements such as flower beds, ornamental plants, trees, and even garden decorations are typically scrutinized as part of the HOA's regulations. Some HOAs may impose restrictions on colors or types of flowers that can be planted, seeking uniformity and curb appeal throughout the neighborhood. Homeowners might find themselves navigating a complex web of rules that dictate not just what they can do with their lawns, but also how much creativity they can infuse into their outdoor spaces. Noncompliance with these mandates can result in various repercussions. Initial infractions typically begin with friendly reminders or notices alerting homeowners to specific areas where they fall short of compliance. However, if issues persist and homeowners do not address them within a given time frame, they may receive formal warnings or fines that escalate over time. For many residents, this pressure to conform to uniform standards can foster feelings of resentment toward the HOA. What starts as an attempt to maintain property values and aesthetic cohesion can devolve into a source of frustration for individuals who long for more freedom in how they manage their homes and yards. The emotional toll is compounded by the fear of financial penalties or confrontations with neighbors who may report them for violations. In this context, it's easy to see how someone might seek inventive solutions as a means of coping with or pushing back against these stringent regulations. The desire for individuality, even when faced with rigid community standards, can inspire creative expressions that challenge traditional norms. For our protagonist, receiving notice about noncompliance regarding their lawns sparked a pivotal moment, a choice between adhering strictly to HOA mandates or finding a way to assert personal expression despite those limitations. The response could take many forms. Some may choose simple adjustments like changing grass types or adding compliant landscaping features. Others might entertain more whimsical ideas that intentionally defy expectations. As we delve deeper into this narrative surrounding HOA regulations and individual expression through landscaping choices, we uncover how this tension ultimately leads our protagonist down an unexpected path towards covering their lawn in glow-in-the-dark grass, a bold statement against conformity and a reflection of personal identity within the confines of suburban life. The exploration of lawn mandates reveals not just the practical implications for homeowners, but also highlights broader themes about individualism versus community standards, an ongoing debate that resonates within many neighborhoods governed by similar associations across the country. Through this lens, we begin to understand how such situations ignite creativity and provoke thought about what it truly means to belong while maintaining one's uniqueness in a world increasingly defined by conformity. When the notice from the Homeowners Association arrived, it felt like a punch to the gut for our protagonist. It was just a simple piece of paper, but the words it contained were anything but trivial. The HOA had deemed their lawn non-compliant with the community's uniformity standards. As they read through the notice, a whirlwind of emotions surged within them: frustration, disbelief, and an undeniable sense of rebellion. Initially, there was disbelief. How could this be happening? The protagonist had taken pride in their lawn, believing it was well-maintained and visually appealing. They remembered spending weekends mowing the grass, watering the plants, and even adding a few colorful flower beds to enhance the yard's beauty. To suddenly receive a notification labeling their efforts as inadequate felt not only unfair, but also perplexing. Had their neighbors truly been so critical, or was this an overreach by the HOA? The protagonist couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being unfairly judged. As disbelief turned into frustration, thoughts raced through their mind. Why did the HOA impose such stringent rules in the first place? Who were they to dictate how one should maintain their property? The notion of uniformity began to feel suffocating, an imposition on personal creativity and freedom. It seemed absurd that a community designed to foster connection and pride could also serve as a cage that stifled individual expression. This revelation only deepened their irritation. The notice felt like an attack, sparking memories of other instances where rigid rules had overshadowed personal preferences. Whether it was neighbors gossiping about each other's yards or whispers about someone's choice of decorations during the holidays, our protagonist felt a growing resentment towards what they perceived as an oppressive culture of conformity. They longed for a sense of community that celebrated differences rather than enforced sameness. With frustration brewing, a rebellious spirit began to emerge within them. This notice wasn't just a formal warning. It represented everything that felt wrong about living under such strict regulations. The protagonist found themselves contemplating ideas that were increasingly audacious. Why should they conform to an outdated concept of uniformity when they could express their individuality in bold and unexpected ways? What if they transformed their lawn into something entirely unique, something that would challenge the very notion of what was considered acceptable? Imagining glow-in-the-dark grass sparked excitement within them. The idea felt liberating, an opportunity to reclaim their space and subvert expectations in one fell swoop. Instead of caving to pressure from the HOA, our protagonist saw this as a chance to make a statement about self-expression and resilience against conformity. The more they thought about it, the more convinced they became that this act of defiance could inspire others in the community to embrace their own uniqueness. Perhaps there were other residents who felt similarly constrained by HOA demands but hadn't yet found a way to voice their concerns or rebel against the rigidity. By taking such an unconventional approach, our protagonist envisioned not just transforming their lawn, but also igniting conversations about individuality within the neighborhood. As ideas flowed through their mind, feelings of empowerment replaced frustration. This wasn't merely about violating HOA rules. It was about reclaiming one's right to express oneself freely in what should be one's sanctuary, the home. The prospect of glowing grass became emblematic of standing up against restrictions that stifled creativity and self-expression. However, amid this burgeoning excitement lay another layer of concern, a nagging worry about how neighbors would react. What if the HOA reacted harshly? What if neighbors considered it an eyesore instead of an artistic statement? Yet each time these fears surfaced, they were met with a firm resolve. Our protagonists reminded themselves that art is often born from pushing boundaries and challenging norms. The potential for creating something beautiful and thought-provoking outweighed any reservations. A sense of empowerment accompanied each decision made along this journey. They were no longer just reacting to an HOA notice. They were taking control of their narrative and crafting an experience that celebrated individuality. Every step, from researching materials to envisioning how their yard would look, filled them with anticipation for what lay ahead. The decision to innovate was not merely about transforming grass. It represented a deeper yearning for connection, to create a conversation starter within the community around self-expression versus conformity. By daring to cover their lawn in glow-in-the-dark grass, our protagonist aimed to inspire others who might have felt constrained by similar regulations but hadn't known how to voice their frustrations creatively. As plans solidified and excitement mounted, our protagonist stood at the precipice of change, not just for themselves but potentially for others who lived under similar constraints. This act wasn't just about claiming personal space. It was about challenging everyone's perceptions of beauty and conformity within suburban life. In essence, covering their lawn in glow-in-the-dark grass evolved into an artistic endeavor rooted in passion and defiance, a fusion of protest and creativity that spoke volumes about identity amidst restrictive regulations. With every passing day leading up to implementation, our protagonist felt more alive than ever, ready to illuminate not only their lawn but also conversations around what it truly means to belong while celebrating one's unique identity within a community framework designed for uniformity. With a decision made to cover their lawn in glow-in-the-dark grass, our protagonists dove headfirst into the research phase, eager to bring their bold vision to life. The journey began with a deep dive into the science behind glow-in-the-dark materials, as well as the practical aspects of sourcing and installing this unique landscaping option. The first step involved understanding how glow-in-the-dark grass actually works. Glow-in-the-dark materials typically rely on phosphorescence, a process where certain substances absorb light and then re-emit it over time. This means that during the day, the grass would soak up sunlight or artificial light and then emit a soft glow once darkness fell. The protagonist learned about different types of phosphorescent compounds used in landscaping, including those derived from natural minerals and synthetic alternatives. They found that while some products promised impressive effects, others might not yield the desired luminosity or durability over time. Next, they began exploring potential suppliers who specialized in glow-in-the-dark grass. A quick search online revealed a handful of companies offering various products, from seeds infused with phosphorescent properties to pre-grown sod options. Each supplier had its own unique selling points, such as eco-friendliness, longevity of glow, and ease of installation. However, the protagonist quickly realized that not all options were created equal. They needed to carefully assess product reviews and descriptions to ensure they were investing in quality materials. One challenge that emerged during this research phase was the cost associated with glow-in-the-dark grass. While traditional sod or seed might be relatively affordable, glow-in-the-dark alternatives tended to be more expensive due to their specialized nature. The protagonist was faced with the reality that creating this unique lawn would require a significant financial investment. They began comparing prices across different suppliers while also considering how much area they wanted to cover. It became clear that budgeting would be essential, but this was a sacrifice they were willing to make for such an extraordinary undertaking. As they delved deeper into potential costs, our protagonist discovered additional considerations beyond just purchasing the grass itself. Installation costs could vary widely depending on whether they chose to do it themselves or hire professionals. Doing it themselves would save money but required physical labor and a learning curve associated with working with unfamiliar materials. Alternatively, hiring experts could ensure a polished finish but would significantly increase overall expenses. Another hurdle arose when considering local climate conditions. What if they didn't understand? What if instead of support, they faced backlash or further scrutiny from the HOA? The protagonist balanced hope with anxiety as they weighed these possibilities in light of their bold intentions. Yet, despite these uncertainties, there was an unmistakable thrill in considering such an audacious transformation for their lawn. This became more than just an act of rebellion. It represented a revolution against oppressive norms and an embrace of personal identity within communal living. As our protagonist leaned into this newfound sense of agency, they realized that change often begins with one person willing to take a stand, even if that stand involves covering their lawn in glow-in-the-dark grass. In this moment, They shifted from feeling like a victim of HOA regulations to becoming an architect of change, ready to challenge conventions and redefine what it meant to belong. The mix of emotions swirling inside them, frustration giving way to rebellion, set the stage for what was to come next, a bold experiment that would not only transform their yard but might also spark conversations around conformity versus individuality throughout the entire neighborhood. This journey would ultimately lead them down an unexpected path filled with creativity, courage, and perhaps even camaraderie among those yearning for greater freedom and expressing themselves amidst rigid community standards. As the initial shock of the HOA notice began to fade, our protagonists found themselves at a crossroads. The frustration that had bubbled up in response to the rigid lawn regulations was evolving into something more, a deep-seated desire for change. They realized that simply complying with a uniformity mandate would not satisfy their yearning for self-expression. Instead, they craved a way to assert their individuality and make a statement that would resonate beyond their own property line. Sitting in their living room, the notice still glaring on the table, the protagonists began to brainstorm ideas that would both comply with the HOA's need for a uniform appearance and simultaneously reflect their unique personality. They understood that adhering to the rules didn't have to mean surrendering their sense of self. The challenge lay in finding an innovative solution that would catch attention and provoke thought, all while defying conventional expectations. The idea of glow-in-the-dark grass emerged almost serendipitously during a moment of daydreaming. They remembered a childhood memory of playing outside at night, enchanted by glowing stars and fireflies. What if they could recreate that sense of wonder right in their front yard? The concept began to take shape, not merely as a whimsical idea, but as a powerful form of protest against the stringent norms imposed by the HOA. As thoughts swirled in their mind, our protagonists started exploring the implications of this bold choice. Covering their lawn in glow-in-the-dark grass would not only challenge the HOA's requirements, but also spark conversations within the community about conformity versus creativity. They envisioned neighbors stopping to stare, children marveling at the glow, and spirited discussions taking place among residents drawn together by curiosity or even admiration. The act of using glow-in-the-dark grass became symbolic for them, a statement that pushed back against the suffocating standards of uniformity. It represented a refusal to be boxed in by regulations that stifled personal expression and creativity. This decision embodied everything they stood for: individuality, freedom, and a playful spirit that refused to be dimmed by conformity. However, this idea wasn't without its challenges. As excitement grew, so did a sense of responsibility. The protagonist began researching glow-in-the-dark grass, how it worked, where to find it, and whether it could truly thrive in their local climate. They learned about phosphorescent materials and how certain types could be used in landscaping. The more they delved into this subject, the clearer it became. While this venture might seem outlandish or frivolous to some, it was grounded in thoughtful consideration and creativity. Their excitement fueled late-night research sessions, searching online for suppliers that specialized in glow-in-the-dark landscaping materials. They joined forums where gardening enthusiasts shared tips on unconventional landscaping ideas. Each new piece of information only solidified their resolve. This was not just a fleeting whim, but rather an innovative project that could redefine how they interacted with their community. Amidst this whirlwind of planning, doubts crept in occasionally. Not all glow-in-the-dark grass varieties were suited for every environment. The protagonist had to scrutinize each product's specifications to determine if it could thrive in their region's climate and soil type. They reached out to gardening forums and local horticultural experts for advice on which varieties performed best under specific conditions, an endeavor that not only broadened their understanding, but also connected them with fellow enthusiasts who shared their passion for innovative landscaping. Throughout this research process, another layer of complexity emerged: municipal regulations and HOA guidelines surrounding unconventional landscaping practices. Even though their choice was intended as a form of self-expression, our protagonist was acutely aware of the potential pushback from neighbors or the HOA if the installation deviated too far from accepted norms. They needed to carefully navigate these conversations while remaining true to their vision. Despite these challenges, there was an undeniable excitement driving our protagonist forward. They envisioned transforming their yard into something magical, an oasis that would come alive at night and captivate anyone passing by. Imagining children's faces lighting up with delight at the sight of glowing grass fueled their determination even further. After balancing cost considerations and product specifications against local regulations and installation logistics, the protagonist finally settled on a reputable supplier known for its high-quality glow-in-the-dark grass products. Their order placed, anticipation filled the air as they awaited delivery, a tangible step toward bringing this audacious vision to life. The journey of sourcing glow-in-the-dark grass became more than just a practical endeavor. It symbolized a commitment to creativity and individuality within community constraints. Each piece of information gathered along the way reinforced their resolve to push against conformity while celebrating unique expression through innovative landscaping. As they envisioned what lay ahead, transforming their lawn into a luminous spectacle, the fusion of excitement and determination painted a vivid picture of possibilities awaiting them. With each passing day leading up to installation, our protagonist felt an empowering sense of agency grow within them, a realization that sometimes breaking free from tradition requires digging deeper than surface-level expectations and embracing new ideas, no matter how unconventional they may seem. This quest for glow-in-the-dark grass became an adventure rich with lessons about creativity, community dynamics, and personal identity, all converging around one audacious choice, illuminating their lawn in defiance of rigid norms while inviting curiosity and conversation into the heart of suburban living. The day had finally arrived. The glow-in-the-dark grass was set to be delivered, and our protagonists could hardly contain their excitement. They had spent weeks researching, budgeting, and planning this moment, and now it was time to put their vision into action. The delivery truck pulled up in the early morning, and the sight of those neatly rolled sections of glowing grass sent a surge of adrenaline through them. This was the beginning of a transformation, not just of their lawn, but of the very way they engaged with their community. Unrolling the grass was no small task. Each roll weighed more than they had anticipated, and the physical labor required to spread it across their yard proved to be an intense workout. As they laid the grass out section by section, they could feel the sweat forming on their brow, but it was accompanied by a euphoric sense of purpose. This endeavor was not just about aesthetics. It was about making a statement against conformity and reclaiming their space. With each section carefully positioned and pressed into the ground, memories of their earlier frustrations with the HOA resurfaced. Those feelings of disbelief and rebellion became fuel for the labor at hand. They envisioned how this vibrant lawn would stand in stark contrast to the neatly manicured traditional yard surrounding them. This wasn't just a project. It was a form of protest and a declaration that individual expression could flourish even within rigid community guidelines. As they worked, curious neighbors began to emerge from their homes. At first, many simply walked by, casting glances at the unusual sight unfolding before them. Some had expressions of confusion, while others chuckled at what they perceived as an odd choice. Whispers floated through the air. What are they doing? Is that really going to grow? But instead of feeling deterred by these reactions, our protagonist felt invigorated by them. Every glance and every question validated the boldness of their actions. One neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, who lived 2 doors down and had always been vocal about her opinions on lawn care, approached with her hands on her hips. "You know that stuff isn't going to look good after a few weeks," she remarked skeptically. Yet instead of responding defensively, our protagonist smiled and explained how the grass worked, how it absorbed sunlight during the day and glowed at night. To their surprise, Mrs. Thompson listened intently. Perhaps curiosity would win over skepticism after all. As installation continued, the protagonist encountered several challenges that tested their resolve. The grass required specific soil conditions to thrive, conditions that weren't fully aligned with what their existing yard offered. They spent hours amending the soil with organic compost to ensure proper drainage and nutrient levels for the new grass to take root effectively. Although labor-intensive, this step became an opportunity for connection with nature, a reminder that growth often requires effort and care. Once installation was complete, there remained one final challenge: ensuring compliance with local regulations regarding unconventional landscaping practices. Our protagonist had done their homework on municipal requirements, but still felt a knot in their stomach as they awaited any potential inspections or inquiries from the HOA or local authorities. To mitigate concerns, they drafted a letter explaining their project, highlighting how glow-in-the-dark grass served as both an artistic expression and an effort to beautify their property while complying with HOA standards regarding overall maintenance and upkeep. This proactive approach demonstrated that they were mindful of community guidelines despite pushing boundaries in creative ways. That first night after installation arrived like an exhilarating crescendo in this journey. As dusk settled over the neighborhood, anticipation filled the air. Our protagonist stood in awe as darkness enveloped their yard, the dark grass illuminated under the night sky, casting an enchanting glow that danced across their lawn like stars twinkling overhead. It was everything they had envisioned and more, a spectacle that transformed not only their yard but also ignited wonder in passers-by. Neighbors began stopping by, drawn in by the unexpected luminosity radiating from what had once been just another ordinary lawn. Children squealed with delight as they ran across the glowing carpet of grass. Adults snapped photos with phones held high, capturing this one-of-a-kind moment for social media sharing. As excitement spread throughout the neighborhood, conversations sparked about creativity versus conformity, the impact of individual expression within community living, and how art can manifest in even the most unlikely places. Intrigued chatter replaced initial skepticism. People began exchanging ideas for unconventional landscaping projects of their own. In that magical moment under starry skies illuminated by glow-in-the-dark grass, our protagonist felt like more than just a homeowner. They were an instigator of dialogue and change within their community. What started as an act of defiance turned into a celebration, a shared experience that transcended mere aesthetics and fostered connection among neighbors. Through hard work, determination, and creativity against tight constraints imposed by conventional norms emerged something beautiful. Not only did our protagonist transform their lawn, but also breathe new life into conversations around self-expression in everyday life. A ripple effect set into motion by one audacious decision to embrace innovation amid tradition. As they gazed at their glowing yard, satisfaction washed over them, not only for having achieved something extraordinary, but also for having invited others along on this journey toward redefining what it meant to truly belong within a community while celebrating individuality amidst uniformity. As the glow-in-the-dark grass settled into its new home, the community's reactions began to unfold, revealing a rich tapestry of emotions and opinions. The initial excitement surrounding the installation quickly evolved into a complex mix of admiration, confusion, and disapproval that highlighted the diverse social dynamics at play within the neighborhood. For many neighbors, especially those with children, the sight of the glowing yard was nothing short of enchanting. Children squealed with delight as they played on the luminescent grass, their laughter ringing through the air as they raced across the yard. Parents joined in on the fun, snapping photos and gathering to admire this unexpected spectacle. It wasn't long before families began to visit more frequently, turning what was once a quiet front yard into a hub of activity and wonder. The glow-in-the-dark grass became a source of joy and inspiration for creativity, sparking conversations about imaginative landscaping and outdoor play. Among these admirers was Mr. Jenkins, a retired teacher known for his love of gardening. He approached our protagonist one afternoon while admiring the lawn. "You've done something truly unique here," he said with a twinkle in his eye. "It's not just grass, it's art. I never thought I'd see anything like this in our neighborhood." His support encouraged others to share their thoughts too, creating an atmosphere where creativity was celebrated rather than critiqued. However, not all responses were positive. The community also experienced a wave of apprehension and skepticism from some residents, especially those who held traditional views about property aesthetics. A small group expressed outright disapproval, questioning the appropriateness of such an unconventional choice within a neighborhood governed by strict HOA guidelines. Mrs. Thompson, who had initially approached with skepticism during installation, became one of the more vocal critics. "What's next?" she lamented to anyone who would listen. "Are we going to start painting our houses neon colors? This isn't a carnival. This backlash raised valid questions about boundaries and taste, a discussion that often emerges when individual expression clashes with collective standards. Some residents worried that embracing such bold choices could lead to a slippery slope where every homeowner felt empowered to make radical changes without regard for community norms. These concerns were echoed at HOA meetings, where members debated whether this transformation could set a precedent for future landscaping projects. The HOA itself found itself in a delicate position, caught between enforcing regulations and recognizing the growing support for our protagonist initiative. As complaints trickled in from disapproving neighbors, HOA members scheduled an inspection to assess compliance with community standards. The tension was palpable. Would they view this innovative lawn as a breach of regulations or as an opportunity to embrace creativity within their guidelines? When the HOA representatives arrived for their inspection, our protagonist felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. They knew that while some members may appreciate the artistic flair of the glow-in-the-dark grass, others might see it as an affront to uniformity and order, key principles upon which many neighborhood rules were built. The inspection turned out to be less confrontational than expected. The representatives took their time examining the lawn, but were undeniably intrigued by its unique appeal. After evaluating its condition and hearing about its maintenance plan, they left without issuing any formal complaints or fines, but promised further discussions about how to accommodate creative landscaping and future guidelines. In the weeks following installation, conversations continued among residents, some sparked by admiration while others fueled by apprehension about maintaining property values and aesthetic consistency within the community. The protagonist became somewhat of a local celebrity. They found themselves engaging in dialogues about individual expression versus conformity more frequently than ever before. Neighbors who initially criticized the decision began softening their stances as they marveled at how this one lawn had brought people together in ways they hadn't anticipated. A few even approached our protagonist with ideas for adding other artistic elements to their yards, perhaps colorful flower beds or whimsical garden ornaments, to foster creativity while still respecting community aesthetics. As discussions unfurled within the neighborhood, it became clear that this glowing lawn represented more than just an eccentric choice. It served as a catalyst for broader conversations around identity, belonging, and what it means to live harmoniously within a community defined by shared standards yet filled with diverse perspectives. With time, even some skeptics began recognizing that there was room for individuality amid shared expectations, that perhaps embracing creativity didn't necessarily mean abandoning community values, but rather enriching them in unexpected ways. Ultimately, reactions among neighbors and HOA members reflected complex social dynamics, an ongoing negotiation between tradition and innovation in suburban life. Through moments of both support and disapproval emerged opportunities for growth and connection among residents navigating their identities within established norms. In this vibrant tapestry of responses lay lessons about acceptance and understanding, the realization that art can thrive even in spaces dominated by rules if approached thoughtfully and respectfully. Our protagonist's glow-in-the-dark grass became not only an expression of personal style, but also a symbol of inclusivity, a reminder that when we embrace individuality while honoring community standards, we create spaces where everyone can find their light shining bright amid shared experiences. As the buzz surrounding the glow-in-the-dark grass continued to grow within the community, the Homeowners Association found itself in a challenging position. The phenomenon was drawing mixed reactions from residents, and the HOA had to navigate this complex landscape carefully. While some members admired the creativity, others voiced concerns that it threatened the neighborhood's established aesthetic standards. The first formal complaint arrived a few weeks after installation, lodged by Mrs. Thompson and a few of her neighbors who were not shy about expressing their disapproval. They argued that the glow-in-the-dark grass was an eyesore and did not conform with the HOA's mandate for uniformity in landscaping. In their eyes, this vibrant transformation was a direct challenge to the community's standards, a deviation that could potentially open the floodgates for further unconventional alterations by other residents. In response to these complaints, the HOA decided to conduct an inspection of the lawn. This was not just standard protocol. It was essential for assessing whether this unique landscaping choice violated any existing regulations. The HOA board convened a special meeting to discuss the situation and prepare for the inspection, weighing both sides of the argument presented by residents. They were keenly aware that their decision could set a precedent for future landscaping projects within the neighborhood. On the day of the inspection, a small team of HOA representatives arrived at our protagonist home. The atmosphere was tense. There was uncertainty about how they would respond to what many viewed as a bold act of defiance against established norms. As they stepped out of their cars, our protagonist greeted them with a mix of apprehension and hope, ready to explain their vision and intentions. The inspectors walked through the yard, examining the glow-in-the-dark grass closely while taking notes. They engaged our protagonist in conversation, asking questions about maintenance practices and how long they expected the grass to last. Our protagonist explained how it absorbed sunlight during the day and emitted a soft glow at night, transforming what had once been an ordinary lawn into something magical. They emphasized that they had researched thoroughly and adhered to guidelines regarding upkeep and care. Throughout the inspection, it became clear that while some members of the HOA were skeptical, others were intrigued by this audacious experiment in creativity. One inspector even remarked, "I have to admit, I've never seen anything like this before." However, another member quickly countered with concerns about property values and overall aesthetic cohesion within the community. After completing their assessment, the representatives huddled together for discussion while our protagonist waited anxiously nearby. Would they issue complaints? Would fines be imposed? Or would they find a way to accommodate this unusual choice within existing guidelines? Ultimately, when they returned with their decision, it was clear that there would be no immediate penalties or demands for removal of the grass, a small victory for our protagonist. However, there were conditions attached. The HOA decided that while they would allow the glow-in-the-dark grass to remain for now, they would require regular updates on its condition and maintenance plans moving forward. They also suggested that our protagonist submit a proposal for any future landscaping projects to ensure compliance with community standards. This initial leniency did not come without its caveats. The HOA made it clear that discussions would continue regarding potential updates to landscaping rules, suggesting that perhaps creative expressions like glow-in-the-dark grass could inspire new guidelines accommodating individuality while still upholding uniformity in some form. While some neighbors expressed relief at this compromise, others remained dissatisfied, particularly those who had voiced complaints initially. The tension between traditionalists and those embracing innovation lingered in conversations around town hall meetings and neighborhood gatherings. In light of these complex dynamics, our protagonists took it upon themselves to foster dialogue within the community about creative landscaping options. They proposed hosting an informal gathering where residents could share ideas about artistic expression in gardens while remaining respectful of HOA guidelines. This initiative aimed not only at bridging gaps between differing opinions, but also at demonstrating how individuality can coexist within community standards. However, the journey wasn't entirely smooth sailing. There were still whispers among those who disapproved of any deviation from established norms. But with each passing day, as more neighbors visited and admired the glowing lawn, some even offering compliments, our protagonist felt bolstered by newfound support. The HOA's response ultimately marked a turning point in how creativity could be interpreted within their framework, a balancing act between enforcing rules and recognizing individual expression as an asset rather than a liability. Through perseverance and thoughtful engagement with both supporters and critics alike, our protagonist opened doors for conversations that had previously seemed impossible, a reminder that sometimes progress requires challenging expectations while paving pathways toward understanding amidst differences. As discussions continued around community aesthetics versus personal expression, it became evident that this experience would leave an indelible mark on both our protagonist's journey and neighborhood dynamics, redefining what it meant to belong within spaces where conformity met creativity head-on. As the glow-in-the-dark grass continued to illuminate the protagonist's lawn, the initial excitement and intrigue surrounding its installation began to evolve into a broader conversation within the community. The reactions from neighbors, ranging from admiration to disapproval, sparked discussions that transcended the simple issue of landscaping. They delve into deeper themes of individuality versus conformity, personal expression, and the purpose of homeowners association regulations. For many residents, this situation became a lens through which to examine their own feelings about creativity and self-expression. In a neighborhood where uniformity had long been the standard, the sight of the glowing lawn challenged individuals to consider how much personal freedom they truly had in shaping their living spaces. Conversations around dinner tables and at neighborhood gatherings shifted from mere gossip about lawn aesthetics to reflections on what it meant to live in a community that valued both collective identity and individual uniqueness. Supporters of the glow-in-the-dark grass began advocating for more openness to creative expressions within HOA guidelines. They argued that community should not be synonymous with conformity. Rather, it should encompass diverse perspectives and preferences. Why should everyone's yard look the same? One neighbor remarked during a gathering. Isn't part of what makes a neighborhood special the variety of its residents and their choices? This sentiment resonated with others who felt stifled by strict regulations that limited their ability to showcase their personalities through their homes. At the same time, there were those who remained steadfast in their belief that adherence to HOA rules was essential for maintaining property values and a cohesive community image. For them, uniformity represented stability and order, a safeguard against chaos that could arise from an unchecked expression of individuality. This faction raised concerns about what might happen if every homeowner began introducing unconventional elements into their landscapes. We can't have everyone doing whatever they want, Mrs. Thompson reiterated in discussions, echoing fears that such changes could lead to a decline in property values or a loss of community identity. The discourse around individuality versus conformity not only highlighted differing opinions, but also illuminated underlying tensions about belonging and identity within the neighborhood. Residents grappled with questions of how far they were willing to go to assert their personal styles while respecting shared standards. Many wondered if it was possible to create a harmonious balance, one that allowed for creative expression without undermining the community's established norms. This dialogue also prompted residents to reflect on the purpose of HOA regulations themselves. Were these guidelines designed solely for aesthetic uniformity, or did they serve a higher purpose, like fostering a sense of community and safety? Some began advocating for reevaluating existing rules in light of this new perspective on creative expression. They proposed forming committees within the HOA to discuss potential updates that would accommodate more diverse landscaping options while still adhering to fundamental principles of maintenance and care. The protagonist's decision to cover their lawn in glow-in-the-dark grass had unwittingly ignited a movement toward reassessing not just individual yards, but also the very fabric of what it meant to be part of this community. The idea that personal expression could coexist with collective standards began resonating deeply among residents eager for change. As conversations progressed, our protagonists took an active role in facilitating these discussions. They organized informal gatherings where neighbors could brainstorm ideas for unique yet compliant landscaping projects, encouraging residents to share their visions for their yards while finding ways to respect HOA guidelines. These meetings became opportunities for connection, fostering relationships among neighbors who had previously only exchanged polite nods in passing. Through these dialogues, participants found common ground as they explored how creativity could enhance their shared living environment rather than detract from it. The glow-in-the-dark grass became a symbol, a testament to innovation within tradition, that encouraged others to think outside the box when considering their own landscaping choices. In essence, this situation sparked an evolution in how residents viewed both themselves and each other as members of a community governed by shared expectations. The rigid lines drawn by HOA regulations began to blur slightly as people recognized that embracing individuality didn't mean abandoning collective values. It could enrich them instead. As discussions continued across lawns bathed in soft luminescence, residents started envisioning possibilities beyond mere compliance with rules, their imaginations ignited by the realization that homeownership could encompass both stability and creativity. This broader conversation expanded beyond just lawns. It encompassed a reevaluation of identity within communal living spaces, an exploration into how diverse expressions could weave together into a vibrant tapestry representing all voices within the neighborhood. In navigating these complexities, our protagonist became not only an agent of change but also a catalyst for meaningful conversations about individuality versus conformity, a reminder that even beneath carefully maintained surfaces lies room for creativity and self-expression when approached thoughtfully and collaboratively. Through their courageous choice, they illuminated not just their lawn but also pathways toward understanding, acceptance, and growth within an ever-evolving community landscape. As the months passed, the glow-in-the-dark grass became an integral part of the neighborhood's identity, transforming not just the lawn it adorned but also the community's spirit. What started as a bold act of defiance against rigid HOA regulations blossomed into a movement that encouraged conversation, creativity, and connection among residents. The protagonist's journey culminated in profound outcomes that reverberated far beyond their own front yard. The HOA, initially hesitant and skeptical, began to realize the potential for positive change sparked by this outlandish experiment. After several community meetings where homeowners shared their thoughts on individuality and expression, the board took note of an emerging consensus: the desire for more flexibility within existing landscaping guidelines. Residents expressed that while they appreciated the need for some level of uniformity, they also longed for opportunities to showcase personal flair without fear of retribution. In response to this groundswell of support for creative expression, the HOA initiated discussions about revising its policies. They formed a committee dedicated to exploring options that would allow residents to introduce unique landscaping features while ensuring adherence to basic maintenance standards. The committee actively sought input from community members, including our protagonist, who was invited to share their experiences and insights from the Glow-in-the-Dark project. This collaborative approach marked a significant shift in how the HOA operated. Rather than merely enforcing rules from atop an ivory tower, they began engaging directly with homeowners, fostering a sense of partnership rather than opposition. As new guidelines took shape, they included provisions for artistic landscaping choices, encouraging residents to express their creativity while maintaining overall aesthetic harmony within the community. The protagonist's actions had not only transformed their lawn, but had also awakened a newfound appreciation for community engagement among residents. People who previously felt disconnected from one another began forming relationships rooted in shared interests and mutual respect. Neighbors who once only exchanged pleasantries now gathered regularly to share ideas about gardening, landscaping, and even hosting neighborhood events that celebrated creativity. Through this experience, our protagonist underwent significant personal growth as well. Initially driven by frustration and rebellion against perceived restrictions, they evolved into a thoughtful advocate for individuality within communal living. They learned that meaningful dialogue could transcend differences and foster understanding between individuals with varying perspectives. This journey instilled in them a greater appreciation for collaboration and compromise, a reminder that positive change often requires patience and an open mind. Reflecting on their journey, our protagonist recognized that their choice to embrace creativity had broader implications for future homeowners navigating similar challenges with HOAs. The experience underscored the importance of balancing personal expression with community standards, a lesson that would resonate with those who found themselves grappling with conformity in other neighborhoods governed by strict regulations. For future homeowners considering properties within HOA communities, this narrative serves as both a cautionary tale and an inspiring example. It illustrates how embracing individuality can lead to meaningful conversations about collective identity, a reminder that homeownership can encompass both personal style and shared values. It encourages others to engage actively with their communities, advocating for change when necessary while respecting established norms. Ultimately, the glow-in-the-dark grass became more than just a lawn feature. It symbolized resilience, creativity, and the power of dialogue in overcoming barriers within community living. The protagonist's journey ignited discussions about what it truly means to belong, how individual voices can contribute to a rich tapestry of experiences within shared spaces. As night fell over the neighborhood once again, casting soft glows from lawns adorned with imaginative designs and artistic touches, it was clear that the landscape had shifted, not just physically but emotionally as well. The community had embraced a newfound ethos, one where individuality flourished alongside unity, where creativity was welcomed rather than stifled. In conclusion, this narrative highlights how one person's courageous decision can spark meaningful change within a community, a reminder that even amidst conformity lies room for bold expressions of selfhood. As future homeowners step into these neighborhoods shaped by both tradition and innovation, they carry with them the opportunity to redefine what it means to live harmoniously while celebrating every unique voice along the way. In doing so, they contribute not only to their own sense of belonging, but also enrich the fabric of community life itself, a legacy born from one glowing lawn illuminating paths toward creative freedom amid shared experiences.